Pokemon Sword and Shield, it's out now. Are you guys playing it, and what do you guys think? So I'm like 4 or 5 hours into the game, and I know there's been a lot of backlash and a lot of hate and animosity thrown at the game, and this might be a controversial opinion. I really like it. So far, I'm really enjoying Pokemon Sword. I've gotten to the point. I'm only at the point where the opening, without going into spoilers, like the part where I'm about to go for my first batch. And I really like the upgrades they've made. I love the switch of the camera, and like most of the time it's still fixed, but at least it moves around and it gives you the sense that you're in a larger world, even if the worlds are mostly the same size as your standard Pokemon area. The wild area is the one sort of major change, where it's this big open area where you can, there's all sorts of Pokemon. It's kind of weird. I have some issues with the way the wild is set up, but conceptually, I like it. It's this open area where they have the patches of grass where there are Pokemon. You can see them. You can see a lot of them. Well, actually, I don't know if you can see a lot, but you can see Pokemon in the wild. Some of them are hidden in the grass, and so you kind of get the mix. Like in Pokemon Let's Go, you saw all the Pokemon, and in most Pokemon, I think every Pokemon game leading up to this one, you didn't see them at all. This time, it's kind of a mix of both, and I like that. I like being able to obviously see, oh, this is an Onix, let me go after it, and then realize, oh my god, that was a horrible idea. Because when you get into the wild, you will start running into Pokemon that are way above your current level. Way above. And your team will get wrecked if you can't run away fast enough. So that's something I had to learn the hard way. Is, hey, that's a really cool big Pokemon, not even walking in the grass, just in the world. But if you're not strong enough level, you are going to get wrecked. I like the cinematic flair, a little more cinematic flair to the game in terms of like cutscenes and presentation. I enjoy the... What else do I enjoy? Yeah, I think the intros to the starter Pokemon are awesome. It does a really great job of showcasing, like, here's these 3 super cute Pokemon, which one do you want? And right now, like, I'm still super early in the game. Maybe it takes a turn. But I enjoy it, and if anything, I would say my fundamental criticism of it, if I had it at all, is it's still a Pokemon game, and it still plays like that in large part, which, I mean, some people really like. I've always had issues with certain aspects of Pokemon. I've always found it kind of clunky in the approach. And sometimes of like, hey, you have to go through this linear path of here's the different gyms, and sometimes there are, I think in particular, like, it's annoyed me of like, oh, there's this pathway I can't go through, and there's just like a person standing in the way. How do I get this thing to move, or who do I talk to move this thing? Or like, I think side quests in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, where like there's no sort of log for when you've triggered a side quest or you found one. And it's just like, oh, you have to remember to talk to this guy in the city who wants this Pokemon. Make sure to, like, remember that and bring it to them. I would have loved a log that just said, like, hey, here's all the things you've activated. Go and do them. And I get the sense this probably doesn't have that either. And so, yeah, early on, thumbs up from me. I'm enjoying it. And I hope everyone else is enjoying it too. I know there's a lot of backlash about it. And like, on one hand, I get it. I get it. There's less Pokemon. There's less moves. And there are certain aspects of the game that have changed in ways that some people do not like. I don't know, for me, like, that stuff isn't important to me. Like, not in the same way that it is for other people. Like, if anything, like, sure. Yeah, I would love a game with 1,000 Pokemon, because it seems like having all those Pokemon carry on forever and ever and ever sounds great, but, like, I don't see most of them anyway. I played Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee. And for me personally, like, yeah, that game has 151 Pokemon in it. I only caught, like, 80. And we're dead. Yeah, I don't think, like, I don't think a Pokemon game has to have every single Pokemon and every single move, like, just building on top of it forever and ever and ever to be a good game. And also, it just leads to, like, how do you make that game work? How do you make a 40-hour RPG work with 3,000 Pokemon and 80 billion moves? And how do you balance that for competitive play? And how do you balance that period? And, like, how do you spice things up? Like, as someone who comes from fighting games, characters come and go from game to game all the time. I play Street Fighter 4, and my main character was Rose. She's not in Street Fighter 5. It's gone. And there's rumors that she's coming back, but, like, characters coming and going does happen. I understand that Game Freak kind of set the precedent that everything was coming back, and they probably could have done a better job of saying, like, hey, not all the Pokemon are coming back this time around. I think that's probably the biggest failing here. There was probably a way, and I'm not a PR expert, so I can't. I don't necessarily know what the right approach is. I feel like what they did isn't inherently bad. I don't think it's inherently bad that they cut Pokemon out. I don't think it's inherently bad that they cut a bunch of moves out. I don't necessarily think having every single thing carry over from game to game was imperative to making a fun Pokemon game. That said, there were probably ways of mitigating the backlash or being more upfront about what they wanted to do with this particular game that they did not do. And I think that's part of it. Like, had they been... I feel like if they'd been more open about it, or, like, found a way of justifying it within the game, of, like, hey, Galar region is super far away from all the other ones, and not all the Pokemon have migrated to this area, and versus just kind of, like, under the rug saying that it wasn't gonna be all there, and talks about production costs, or whatever the case might be. There is a better way to do this than what has transpired, and it's unfortunate, because I think, at least from what I played so far, I think they've made a really good game. At least they've made a really good Pokemon game that is probably catching more heat than I think it deserves.